Madison Hayes never imagined that one evening would alter the course of her life forever. It all began at a charity event hosted at the grand estate of Ethan Blake, one of the most influential men in their city. Madison had been invited through her close friend Sophia Hayes, who insisted that attending such a glamorous gathering would give Madison the perfect opportunity to mingle with the elite. Madison, a determined yet humble woman, had no interest in playing the part of high society, but she went along out of loyalty to her sister. The night was glittering with crystal chandeliers, golden drapes, and the delicate sound of a live orchestra that floated across the room. Guests dressed in flowing gowns and sharp tuxedos exchanged pleasantries while sipping expensive wine. For Madison, who preferred quiet evenings with books, the entire scene felt overwhelming. She tried to hide in the corner, away from the spotlight, but fate had other plans for her. Across the ballroom, Ethan Blake's sharp eyes noticed Madison. Unlike others who desperately tried to capture his attention, Madison carried herself with effortless grace and authenticity. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, and that very simplicity caught his interest. Ethan, known for his commanding presence and the reputation of being nearly untouchable, decided to walk across the hall toward her. "Madison Hayes, isn't it?" Ethan's voice was smooth yet carried an authority that silenced the air around them. Madison blinked in surprise. How did a man like Ethan Blake know her name? "Yes, that's me," she replied nervously, clutching her glass of water tighter than necessary. "You have an intriguing aura," Ethan remarked with a faint smile. "Most people here wear masks. You don't." His words both flattered and unsettled her. Madison wasn't used to such direct attention, especially from someone like Ethan. She wanted to respond, but before she could, Sophia hurried over, clearly thrilled by the sight of Ethan speaking to her sister. "Mr. Blake, it's such an honor." Sophia beamed, almost pushing Madison aside to place herself in the conversation. Ethan, however, barely shifted his gaze from Madison, which only fueled Sophia's envy. As the evening continued, Ethan kept finding ways to circle back to Madison. He asked her questions about her ambitions, her values, and her view of the world. Unlike most, she didn't flatter him or exaggerate her answers. She was simply herself. That honesty pulled him in, though it ignited something darker in Sophia, who had always been used to being the center of attention. Later that night, when the guests moved to the garden for a fireworks display, Madison found herself walking under the soft glow of lanterns. She tried to gather her thoughts, unsure why Ethan's presence had shaken her so much. Suddenly, she felt someone approach. It was Ethan again. "You don't belong on the sidelines, Madison," he said quietly, almost as if he were reading her inner thoughts. "You deserve more than being overshadowed." His words pierced deep, as if he had seen right through her hidden insecurities. Madison felt her heart race, but before she could reply, Sophia's voice echoed across the garden, pulling Ethan's attention. The night ended with confusion swirling in Madison's heart. She had gone there simply to support her sister, but somehow Ethan Blake had noticed her in a way no one ever had before. What Madison didn't know was that this single encounter would set off a chain of events involving ambition, betrayal, and a war between blood and loyalty, events that would eventually test the very foundation of family and love. As Madison drove home later, she replayed Ethan's words in her head. "You deserve more than being overshadowed." She didn't realize it yet, but this was just the beginning of a story that would consume her entire world. The days following the charity event stirred a quiet storm in the Hayes household. Madison Hayes, though modest by nature, couldn't ignore the way her life had shifted since meeting Ethan Blake. The image of his piercing gaze and the weight of his words, "You deserve more than being overshadowed," haunted her thoughts. She tried to carry on with her usual routines, but Sophia Hayes wouldn't let the incident fade so easily. Sophia had always been the one admired, the one praised. From their teenage years, she relished being the center of attention while Madison stayed in the background. But now, Sophia's carefully built image felt threatened. The idea that Ethan Blake, wealthy, powerful, and unattainable, had chosen to notice Madison instead of her was intolerable. At breakfast one morning, Sophia stirred her coffee with exaggerated calm. "Madison," she began, her tone sharp under the surface, "don't get carried away by a few words from Ethan Blake. He speaks like that to everyone. It's his charm." Madison looked up from her plate, startled by the sudden mention. "I'm not," she started, but Sophia cut her off. "You've always been too naive," Sophia continued, her eyes narrowing. "Men like Ethan aren't interested in someone like you. They're used to women with status, beauty, and influence. Don't embarrass yourself by thinking otherwise." Madison felt her chest tighten. She had never competed with Sophia, never wanted to. But Sophia's words carried poison, a warning that her sister's envy was beginning to show its teeth. Meanwhile, Ethan himself couldn't shake off Madison's memory. For years, he had been surrounded by people who only sought his wealth and power, yet Madison's authenticity lingered like a breath of fresh air. He found himself making excuses to reach out, attending smaller gatherings where he knew the Hayes sisters might appear. Each time, Sophia threw herself in his path, but Ethan's attention inevitably returned to Madison, fueling the fire of jealousy that burned within Sophia. One evening, Ethan extended a personal invitation for Madison to visit his office. "There's something I'd like to discuss with you," he had written in a neatly penned note. Madison was hesitant. Part of her feared Sophia's reaction, while another part worried about stepping into Ethan's world. Still, curiosity and a quiet pull she couldn't name pushed her to accept. When Madison arrived, she was struck by the vastness of Ethan's empire. His office overlooked the city skyline, glowing with the promise of power and ambition. Ethan greeted her warmly, offering her a seat across from his polished oak desk. "I've been considering something," Ethan began, his tone serious yet gentle. "I want you to join one of my foundation projects. You have a perspective others lack. I see potential in you, Madison, potential that shouldn't be wasted." Madison blinked, stunned. She had never imagined being offered such an opportunity, let alone by someone like Ethan. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Because you're real," Ethan replied simply, "and that's rare." Their conversation stretched late into the evening, touching on topics ranging from charity work to personal values. Madison left that office with a strange mix of hope and unease. Ethan had opened a door she never thought possible, but she knew Sophia would see it as betrayal, and she was right. When Sophia discovered Madison's meeting with Ethan, her fury erupted. "Do you think you're special now?" Sophia spat, her eyes blazing. "Do you think you can just take everything I've worked for? He was supposed to notice me, not you." Madison tried to calm her, but Sophia's jealousy had already taken root too deeply. That night, Sophia made a vow to herself. If Madison dared to step further into Ethan's life, she would make sure her sister paid the price. Across town, another figure entered the picture, Ryan Carter, Madison's childhood friend and confidant. Ryan had always admired Madison quietly, but he could sense the storm brewing around her. He warned her to tread carefully. "Ethan Blake isn't just a man, Madison. He's a world of power, politics, and enemies. Sophia won't be the only one you'll have to worry about." Madison listened, torn between the pull of Ethan's influence and the fear of losing her sister forever. The tension was building, and the line between love, loyalty, and ambition was beginning to blur. What Madison didn't know was that Sophia had already begun plotting her downfall. Driven by envy and desperation, Sophia sought out Olivia Blake, Ethan's ambitious and manipulative cousin. Olivia, who had long resented Ethan's success, found in Sophia the perfect partner to stir chaos. Together, they would hatch a plan that would test Madison's strength and Ethan's loyalty in ways neither could foresee. The stage was set. Madison stood at the edge of a battle she never wanted, caught between her sister's venom, Ethan's world, and her own search for identity. The shadows of envy had begun to spread, and there was no turning back. Madison Hayes had always lived with a quiet sense of balance. She wasn't one to chase drama, nor did she crave the spotlight. But ever since Ethan Blake entered her life, everything seemed to spiral out of her control. His attention, His respect and his belief in her abilities felt like sunlight breaking through clouds she had long grown used to. Yet with that light came shadows. Shadows cast by her sister Sophia Hayes and by forces she didn't yet fully understand. Sophia had never forgiven Madison for stealing the attention she believed should have been hers. Her jealousy was no longer a fleeting emotion. It had transformed into a consuming fire. Every time Ethan looked at Madison, Sophia felt invisible, and invisibility was something she couldn't bear. That's when Olivia Blake, Ethan's ambitious cousin, entered her orbit. Olivia had long carried resentment toward Ethan. Though she came from the same prestigious family, Ethan's dominance in both business and reputation always overshadowed her. When Sophia approached her, Olivia immediately recognized the opportunity to strike a blow where Ethan least expected, through Madison. Their first secret meeting was tense but productive. Sophia, dressed in a tailored black dress, spoke with the sharpness of desperation. She doesn't deserve him. Madison has always been the quiet one, the weak one. But somehow she's caught his eye. If we work together, we can remind him of his place. And hers. Olivia smirked, her voice dripping with cunning. You want to hurt your sister, and I want to bring Ethan down. Our goals align perfectly. From that moment, a dangerous alliance was forged. The two women began weaving a plan to undermine Madison, targeting her reputation, her confidence, and ultimately her bond with Ethan. Meanwhile, Madison found herself torn. On one hand, Ethan's growing trust and encouragement made her feel alive in ways she never thought possible. He had placed her on a new project within his foundation, giving her leadership responsibilities she never dreamed of. Madison poured her heart into the work, determined not to let him down. On the other hand, Sophia's hostility grew more unbearable by the day. Their once warm, sisterly bond had turned icy, with Sophia throwing cutting remarks whenever they were alone. Ryan Carter, ever the voice of reason, noticed the tension escalating. One evening, as they sat in a quiet cafe, he leaned forward and spoke earnestly. Madison, you need to be careful. People like Ethan live in a world where loyalty is currency and betrayal is inevitable. You're not just stepping into his world, you're stepping into a battlefield. And Sophia, she's not herself anymore. I think she's planning something, Madison sighed, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. Ryan, I don't want any of this to become a battle. I just want to do something meaningful. Ethan believes I can make a difference, and for once, I believe it too. Ryan reached across the table, touching her hand gently. Just promise me you won't lose yourself in the process. But as much as Madison tried to hold on to her sense of self, the storm around her grew stronger. Olivia and Sophia had already set their trap in motion. They began spreading whispers in social circles that Madison was manipulative, that she used her innocence to ensnare Ethan, that she was nothing more than a gold digger in disguise. Subtle comments here, a misleading photo there. It didn't take long before rumors began to swirl. Ethan, though aware of the gossip, refused to believe it. His trust in Madison remained unshaken. Still, the pressure mounted. At a charity gala one evening, Madison found herself the subject of veiled insults and cold stares. She tried to stay composed, but Sophia's mocking smile across the room revealed the truth. This was her sister's doing. Later that night, Madison confronted Sophia. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded, her voice trembling with both anger and hurt. Sophia's eyes glittered with bitterness. "Because you don't belong in his world. That's my place, Madison, not yours. You've always been the shadow, and that's where you should stay." The words cut deep, but Madison refused to crumble. For the first time, she pushed back. "You may see me as your shadow, Sophia, but Ethan doesn't, and maybe that's what scares you." The confrontation marked a turning point. Madison realized that Sophia's jealousy wasn't just a phase, it was a war, and Olivia Blake was only fueling the flames. Unaware to Madison, Olivia and Sophia's next move was already underway. They planned to plant fabricated evidence that would make Madison appear untrustworthy in Ethan's eyes, financial discrepancies in the foundation project she was leading. If successful, not only would it destroy Madison's credibility, but it would also shatter Ethan's trust in her. As the trap closed in, Madison leaned more on Ryan for strength. He stood by her, offering support and reminding her of who she truly was. But even Ryan couldn't protect her from the wave of betrayal that was about to crash into her life. Madison's world was no longer just about her quiet routines and humble dreams. She was now caught in a web of deception spun by those she thought she knew best. And the question looming over her heart was devastating. When the truth comes out, who will stand by her side? Ethan or no one at all? Madison Hayes had always prided herself on resilience. She was the kind of person who endured quietly, carrying her burdens without letting the world see the cracks beneath her calm surface. But even the strongest walls crumble when the pressure becomes unbearable, and the pressure in her life had reached a suffocating peak. It began with the whispers. Small, insidious rumors that painted her as manipulative, dishonest, even opportunistic. At first, Madison ignored them, believing Ethan Blake's trust in her would shield her from any harm. But as days turned into weeks, she couldn't deny the shift in the way people looked at her. Clients at the foundation grew guarded. Meetings that once flowed with collaboration now bristled with subtle doubt. She knew exactly where the poison came from: Sophia Hayes and Olivia Blake. The betrayal cut deeper because it was family. Madison had spent years trying to build bridges with her sister, sacrificing her own happiness to keep Sophia content. But now she saw the truth with painful clarity. Sophia didn't want peace. She wanted dominance. And Olivia, with her cunning intellect, provided the perfect partnership for destruction. The breaking point came one Thursday morning when Ethan's assistant, Grace Parker, called Madison into the office unexpectedly. Madison walked into the sleek, glass-walled conference room, her palms damp despite the chill of the air conditioning. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his jaw set in a line of quiet frustration. Beside him were two board members, faces unreadable. On the table lay a stack of papers, financial records from the very project Madison had been leading. "Madison," Ethan began, his voice calm but heavy. "There are some discrepancies here. Transactions that don't align with our approved budget. Can you explain this?" Madison's stomach lurched as she scanned the documents. Numbers she had never seen before, expenses she hadn't approved, signatures forged in her name. It was all fabricated, but to anyone else, it painted her as careless at best, corrupt at worst. "This isn't me," she said firmly, her voice steadier than she felt. "I've never authorized these expenses. Someone is trying to frame me." One of the board members exchanged a glance with the other. "That's a serious accusation." Madison looked at Ethan, searching for even a flicker of belief in his eyes. To her relief, he didn't waver. "I know Madison," he said firmly. "This isn't her doing, but we need to find out who is behind it." The meeting ended with an internal investigation launched, but the damage was already rippling outward. News of the discrepancies spread like wildfire, feeding the narrative Sophia and Olivia had so carefully crafted. Madison's credibility was hanging by a thread. That evening, Madison sat alone in her apartment, staring at the velvet box containing her diamond earrings. Once a symbol of pride and independence, now they seemed like fragile reminders of everything at stake. Her phone buzzed with messages, some from her parents demanding explanations, others from acquaintances offering hollow sympathy. And then there were Sophia's texts, sharp as knives. "I warned you. You don't belong in his world." Madison's tears came hot and sudden. For years she had endured being dismissed, overlooked, and criticized by her family. But this was different. This was calculated destruction. And it was working. Ryan Carter found her the next morning at the cafe where they often met. One look at her puffy eyes and he knew. "They've gone too far," he said quietly. "They're ruining everything, Ryan," Madison whispered, her voice breaking. "Not just my work, my reputation, my future. How can I fight something this big?" Ryan leaned closer, his expression steady and resolute. "By refusing to break. You don't need to fight on their terms. You just need to hold on to the truth. Ethan believes in you. I believe in you. That's your strength." But Madison wasn't sure belief would be enough. The foundation's board was growing restless. Investors were asking questions. Every hallway glance at work felt like a silent judgment. Ethan stood by her, yes, but she could see the strain it caused him too, balancing loyalty to her with the responsibility of protecting his company. The breaking point within Madison came one night at her parents' house. She had agreed reluctantly to attend dinner, hoping to mend some semblance of peace. Instead, she walked into a battlefield, her mother's first words cut like glass. "Madison, how could you embarrass this family like this? Do you know what people are saying?" Madison's chest tightened. "Do you know what really happened? Or are you just listening to Sophia?" Sophia, seated smugly at the table, leaned forward. "Don't blame me for your mistakes. You've always wanted to play victim, Madison. Now the world sees it too." "Enough," Madison snapped, her voice louder than she intended. "I've spent my whole life trying to please this family, trying to keep Sophia happy, trying to earn even a fraction of your approval. And what do I get? Lies, accusations, a sister who would rather destroy me than see me succeed." The room fell silent. Even her father, usually detached, looked shaken. Madison's hands trembled, but she held her ground. "I'm done apologizing for existing. I'm done shrinking so Sophia can shine. If that means I lose all of you, then so be it. Because I will not lose myself." For the first time, Sophia's smirk faltered. Madison didn't wait for a response. She stood, grabbed her coat, and walked out of the house with her heart pounding. The night air felt cold against her skin, but inside she felt something fierce, a spark of liberation. Back in her apartment, she collapsed onto the couch, shaking from the confrontation. It hadn't solved anything, but it had marked a line in the sand. For once, she had spoken her truth without fear. And in that moment, Madison realized something powerful. Breaking didn't always mean shattering. Sometimes breaking meant breaking free. Still, as she drifted into uneasy sleep, one thought lingered. Sophia and Olivia weren't finished. The war was only beginning. Madison Hayes sat in her new office, high above the city skyline, sunlight streaming across the sleek glass desk. It still felt surreal. Only weeks ago, her life had been unraveling, her reputation shredded by rumors, her family tearing at her spirit, her future dangling by a thread. Yet here she was now, senior creative strategist at Innovate Tech, leading a team that looked to her for guidance. Her work valued not only for what it produced, but for the vision behind it. She turned slightly, her gaze falling on the small potted succulent Olivia Blake had gifted her as a welcome gesture. Olivia, the woman Madison had once thought of only as a rival, was now an unexpected ally. Their rooftop conversations about ambition, family, and boundaries had become a quiet anchor in Madison's chaotic transition. The diamond earrings glimmered faintly in their place on Madison's ears. They weren't just jewelry anymore. They had become a symbol, a reminder of the night her sister Sophia struck her in public, yes, but more importantly, a reminder of the moment Madison chose not to shrink. They reminded her of resilience, of growth, of the worth she had finally learned to claim for herself. Work had become not just a career, but a sanctuary. Under Ethan Blake's mentorship, Madison flourished. Ethan treated her with the same respect he gave his most seasoned executives, valuing her ideas without question. Grace Parker, Ethan's assistant, had become both a colleague and a friend, offering warmth and quiet encouragement on difficult days. The Innovate Tech team, once a daunting circle of strangers, now greeted her with genuine camaraderie. Outside of work, Madison's life was shifting too. She had moved into a larger apartment closer to headquarters, a space filled with natural light, books she loved, and walls painted in calming hues she had chosen herself. It was the first time she truly felt she was living in a home that reflected her spirit, not just a place she retreated to after surviving another exhausting day. Her relationship with Sophia remained complicated, but the edges had softened. The slap at Bellamy's and the confrontation at their parents' house had forced something neither sister had ever dared before: honesty. Sophia's apology, brief, awkward, but sincere, had cracked open the door to change. They weren't suddenly close, but the venom had lessened. Their texts now were cautious, but free of hostility. Madison no longer held her breath waiting for the next jab. Instead, she allowed space for whatever their relationship might become. Her parents, too, had shifted in subtle ways. They still carried their biases, still compared Madison and Sophia in ways that stung. But there were moments, small acknowledgments, words of pride, that had never existed before. Her father had visited her apartment, helping her mount bookshelves and quietly admitting he admired her independence. Her mother had asked to see the office where she worked, her eyes widening with genuine wonder at the scale of Innovate Tech's headquarters. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was progress. One Saturday evening, Madison sat in her parents' dining room once again, this time for her mother's birthday. The air was lighter than before, laughter floating between conversations. Ryan Carter was there too, his steady presence grounding her. Across the table, Sophia announced her engagement news with Ryan by her side, and for the first time, Madison didn't feel overshadowed. She smiled sincerely, raising her glass and toast. Sophia's gaze caught hers, and for a fleeting moment, gratitude flickered in her eyes. Later that night, as Madison walked back to her car, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan. Congratulations again on leading the security app launch. The board was impressed. You've got a brilliant future here, her chest tightened with pride. She thought back to that humiliating night in Bellamy's, to the sting of her sister's hand against her cheek, to the whispers and accusations that nearly broke her. How strange, how powerful, that one painful moment had become the catalyst for everything that followed. At home, Madison placed her earrings carefully in their box, watching them sparkle under the soft light. They no longer felt like trophies she had to prove she deserved. They felt like companions, carrying her story forward. As she prepared for bed, Madison allowed herself a rare smile. Life wasn't perfect. Family tensions lingered, old wounds still ached, and new challenges at work loomed on the horizon. But she no longer defined herself by others' approval. Her worth was no longer a fragile thing handed out or withheld by family, colleagues, or even fate. It was hers, unshakable, rooted deep within her. Madison Hayes was no longer the woman who allowed herself to be diminished. She was the woman who had faced betrayal, humiliation, and loss, and had transformed them into growth, courage, and independence. As she drifted into sleep, one truth settled firmly in her heart. Sometimes the most painful moments lead to the most meaningful transformations. Sometimes a slap meant to humiliate could ignite the fire that changed everything. And as dawn broke the next morning, light spilling across her apartment walls, Madison knew this was only the beginning.